This conference will now be recorded.
So during the 2020 legislative session, House Bill 969 established the Office of Broadband at DEO to increase the availability and effectiveness of broadband internet throughout the state, especially in small and rural communities. That's not saying that it's excluding urban communities, but we are putting our focus on some of the smaller and rural communities. The bill also authorizes DEO to access federal grant dollars and assist communities with the expansion of broadband services. And the office is currently staffed by existing resources at in the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. And the Office of Broadband has been really fortunate to have support and commitment from fantastic partners such as the Florida Regional Councils Association, the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television, state agencies such as the Florida Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and Department of Education, and many, many others. Next slide, please. So, per our statute 364.0315, the office has been provided 4 main directives, and these include creating a strategic plan, building and facilitating local technology planning teams, encouraging the public use of internet service through broadband grant programs, and monitoring, participating in, and providing input on FCC proceedings. Next slide, please. To meet the directives in statute, DEO has adopted a 3-phase approach. And phase 1 looks at a feasibility study to specify the nature of the connectivity gap and why it exists. In 2020, DEO submitted an application to the U.S. Department of Commerce, the Economic Development Administration, with a request for $3 million to fund a study. And we want this feasibility study to be a statewide feasibility study. However, in fall of 2020, we were notified that we were not going to be awarded that funding. With the help from our partners, though, the office has requested broadband studies, broadband plans, and different projects that are being completed at the regional, county, and community level to assist in identifying the current status of broadband for the strategic plan for broadband. The second phase of this approach is the strategic plan itself. And the office has begun an outline on that plan, and we're working to aggregate all of the information collected during these workshops and via the DEO website to include all of that information into our strategic plan. The technology planning teams gathered together in the workshops over the next few weeks are from 13 industry sectors, and y'all really will provide vital information for this conversation and for partnerships for expanding broadband accessibility. And finally, the third phase of this approach is implementation of the initiatives in our strategic plan. And once upon completion of the plan, we really look forward to identifying other resources in helping us implement the directives. Next slide, please. So the Office of Broadband has created a website that houses information on federal, state, and state funding opportunities. And we regularly update this site. It includes information on the workshops. You'll find information on a survey link that mirrors the questions and conversation that we will have today. And that link will be for more public input on broadband expansion. One of the recent developments you may have heard about is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund from the FCC. $191 million was awarded to Florida entities. The FCC has provided a summary of that auction by county and the bidders within those counties. You can access the link on our website for more information, but it's important to note that DEO does not have a role in determining who gets what or how the funds can be utilized. Next slide, please. In preparation for possible grant funding in the future through DEO, priority we'll go to project proposals highlighting the following: removing barriers for entry to underserved areas, encouraging local and regional investment, addressing many of the needs which have been exposed during the pandemic, such as remote working, distance learning, and telemedicine. Finally, the Office of Broadband is continuously monitoring broadband development activity and participates in national association discussions on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. On our Florida Office of Broadband website, a map highlighting internet speeds by census block is available for you to review. The State of Florida Minimum Internet Download Speeds Map, yes, it's a very long name, uses only FCC data. And this, since January of 2015, the FCC has defined broadband internet as download speeds greater than 25 megabits per second and upload speeds of 3 megabits per second. We choose to represent the FCC data a little bit differently because one of our goals is to focus on the underserved and unserved populations. We focus that high, and we chose to highlight the census blocks that show the minimum download speeds, meaning anything 25.3 or less. So you are considered served if you have 25.3, and anything that would be considered underserved or unserved is what is below that 25.3 threshold. So the data for the map is provided by the FCC from June of 2019, and the data for fixed internet is for fixed internet service only. It does not include satellite or mobile data, but please go out to the website if you have not. It is really interesting. I'll be honest, I geek out on it every now and again when I get into certain communities. So it's pretty interesting. Next slide, please. So today is the second broadband workshop that we've had, and we had our first one yesterday through the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And today's is being conducted with the Florida Regional Councils Association. We have 10 regional workshops that we're hosting, and those are being facilitated by the RPCs. All workshops are going to be completed by February 12th. Workshop participants include a variety of industry sector leaders, which you can see here on the slide. It represents everything from healthcare, education, local government, tourism, agriculture, and more. After the workshops are completed, the Florida Regional Councils Association will aggregate the information and testimonies from the workshop participants in a format provided by us, and that data will be shared with DEO by February 15th. We're really looking forward to the data. We really want to hear what you have to say. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline to talk about our Poll Everywhere details.
Hello again. Thank you very much, Katie. So at this point, we are going to get into a bit of a survey and some discussion. So I'm not sure how many of you have used Poll Everywhere before. Here are some instructions for how to join. You can either go to the website, if you just click or copy the link to participate on the computer, or you can participate using your phone by texting Goldleaf 599 to 22333, and you should get an automatic message back saying that you've joined the poll. And so we will provide, we'll leave a little bit of time for each question, but essentially as we run through them, you'll be able to see the results come in real time, and so we can see how everything breaks down on the screen. So I think I will give everyone a minute or two to set that up. And if you have any technical difficulties as we go through this, please feel free to speak up or say something in the comment box so that we can help you out.
So as you are going through and setting up so that you can participate in these polling questions, I just want to kind of mention that we don't have very many questions. There's 8 questions. It should be relatively easy for you to provide feedback for us. And all of these questions are really to engage us at a very high level in the understanding of regional availability and accessibility of broadband service. The questions are also going to assist us in the design of state programs for the future. They're going to help us with resources, deployment, expansion, resiliency, all of those things. So we really appreciate your feedback and your patience. I hope everybody's able to get in and get into activate their Poll Everywhere information.
And I think people may be good to go at this point. Our first question is kind of a test question to get familiar with how it works. So maybe we can move to that and see if it works okay for everyone. And if we have any problems, then we can adjust them at that point. All right. Okay. Oops. Here we go. All right. So our first question, it's a real brain teaser. Do you prefer chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Or I guess I added that. That's what my mind went to. Chocolate or vanilla. All right, so results are coming in, which is a good sign. Looks like everyone's feeling pretty comfortable with the Poll Everywhere platform, and I haven't heard otherwise so far. So we'll just give this one another minute, and then we can move on to the broadband related questions. It's interesting.
The clear winner here.
Yeah, definitely. Although I mean, the vanilla supporters are really holding strong with that 23%. I think I spoke too soon. Definitely people prefer chocolate. That is totally okay. Honestly, I would love a strawberry option. That would be my vote. Yeah. All right. Okay, well, I hope this test question's gone smoothly for everyone. That's essentially how all the other questions are going to work, where as you're sending your response in, you can see in real time how the field is laying out. So I guess we will move on then. Sound all right?
All right. So, okay. Let's see here. So our very first question is going to be asking what survey or what section of what industry sector are you in? What do you represent? What part are you working in regularly? That's really where we're looking to get a little bit of feedback here. I'm hoping that we have a good representation from multiple sectors here. And again, you can see we did have to break it down into from local government because there's lots of different sections of that local government, which is good. Okay.
Okay, we have a comment that somebody lost their Poll Everywhere connection, but they're from a community organization, which is great. So we've got someone in that category. And also, I'm sorry to hear that you lost the connection. I wonder why that happened. If you were connecting from a computer, you could try texting a response to the number listed at the top of the screen. Texting gold lead 599 to 22333.
So our next question is going to be, what county is your industry located in? Your place of business, your organization, helps us better identify where those needs are, and what the needs are. Okay, that's fantastic. It looks like we have a good response here. I'm glad to see some great representation from our communities. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, so moving on to our next question. Are you aware of any local broadband studies or plans for your area? There are communities throughout Florida who have started their own studies, whether it is at a regional level or a county level. I know over the past 10 years, there's been a lot, and even more so in the last 5. So that's really something that we are interested in. If there is a broadband study or project that you have or plan that you know of for your community, please share it with us. We really would love to see it and read about it and help you in any way that we can. Okay, so our 4th question here is, of the following factors, which is the most important regarding broadband internet accessibility? Is it cost? Is it speed? Is it reliability? And this is really kind of getting us an idea of what's most important to your sector. We know that cost is really important, but there's so many other components to broadband internet and that access. So we're just curious what is the biggest factor in that for you, and specifically for your industry. And a lot of these questions we also recognize to be a little bit of a difference when we get outside that industry sector and into more residential. We know that some of these answers will be modified just a little bit.
And let us know if you have any questions about the questions themselves, or if you have any comments about any of these questions. Please let us know.
And I would love to hear your thoughts. Looks like we're doing pretty well with some responses. Reliability, that's fantastic. This is a much more rural area. Is there someone from one of the communities that would like to speak towards that, the reliability piece?
This is Roy Baker. Can you hear me?
You can, yes. Hi, Roy.
You left off a category when you talk about these factors here. You don't have the factor called availability. You know, the rural community, many of those counties that you listed do not have availability of broadband.
Okay. And that's a good point, Roy, and that's exactly why we're here. That is a great point. So I will definitely add that to our list here. So what do you think that is? I know that you're very involved in your community. Can you speak a little bit more towards that availability piece?
First of all, the FCC study on census tracts, if you have one person in that census tract that has broadband, FCC checks that box and says that census tract is covered. That's a horrible study, just a horrible study. There's too many situations here where one person in a whole census tract may have coverage and the other 99.5% do not. So that's what I'm really talking about, availability. Opportunity Florida covers 10 rural counties in Northwest Florida. We have several that are working hard to move forward in this. All 10 of them need a broadband solution. So I'm fully confident that when there is availability, you'll see the rates drop. So the cost factor will go down in all those markets because the competition will make it go down.
Great point. Thank you, Roy. And that's one of the, going back to the map, that's one of the reasons that we flipped that map on our website, was to try to see, you know, what those lowest points were for internet speeds. Because typically the FCC does show the higher speed, and who has it. And to your point, that one person in that census block that has 25.3 or higher is noted, but our map does look at who does not have that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that comment very much. Thank you.
Katie, this is Brad. Can I jump in on one thing? To Roy's point, the FCC changed last year the census block mapping methodology to they call it a heat map or a delta map, and so they are moving towards what Roy, I believe, is looking for, which will be an actual granular map of where service is, and not just a service or excuse me, a census block where one person's served, they consider the whole block served. So I think that mapping progress or that process will be done next year. And so as you guys are building your plan, you're going to have a much more granular map of where service is not available under that 25.3 standard. So I think to Roy's point, all of America will have a much better map from the FCC.
Okay, that's really good to know. That's fantastic. Thank you. See, I told you, every time I talk to Brad, I learn something new. So that is something we will definitely, I know, right? So we will definitely be on the lookout for that, as well as our communities. That's fantastic. Let's see here. I think there was another question.
I think we had a few comments come in.
Oh, wonderful.
We had one from Cheryl McDaniel, who shared, as far as the point about availability goes, that in the education sector, when they moved to remote learning for COVID, that availability was an issue for many families. And I don't know if Cheryl wants to comment on that further, but I just wanted to share that one. We also had a comment from Julie Dennis that in McCullough County, it's difficult to choose between the factors that are listed in the poll because all of those things are important to the economic growth of the community.
And Julie and Cheryl, I completely agree with you on both of those comments. And being it from this particular area, yes, I can understand definitely a little bit more. Julie, do you have any other comments that you would like to add?
Hi. No, not really. I just looking at all of the factors here. It was difficult for me to choose. I was going, oh, I don't know which one should we put here. We do have connections in some of our corridors, but you can, I mean, by looking at our map, you'll see that we've got some big holes in our reliability and in our speed connection, and especially as people. You know, we've noticed an uptick in at-home businesses in Wakulla County in general from last year, probably due to the pandemic, and so that connection speed is even more important as we see that sector grow.
Thank you, Julie. I'm wondering,
Katie,
Troy,
I think Troy had a question. I think he was talking, but he may have been muted at the time.
Oh no.
Troy, did you have something? I think you're muted.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. I really appreciate the comments and the interest in that last question. So our next question is, what type of internet technology does your industry sector currently utilize through its service provider? And this is to try to help us identify what's actually being used out there. in your region specifically, because what this will do is will help us move forward with with our programs and funding opportunities. We have looked at a lot of different states and how they have moved forward. So, but we got to have a place to start. We need to know where you currently what you're currently using in broadband. And it looks pretty even coming in. Oh, I love this poll everywhere, man. I get some good answers real fast. This is great. So thanks for participating. And it looks like fiber. That's fantastic. That's really great that it looks like fiber is being used. But we do understand that there are other technologies. Did anyone have a comment on that? That could speak to their industry? All right. Well, let's get on to the next question then, because the next question is moving forward into the future. So for a future technology,
Actually,
oh, I'm sorry.
We did actually have a comment, if you don't mind if I just interrupt for a second about this question. We had another comment from, well, we had one from Commissioner Jones in Franklin County, which I missed for the last question, just stating that that speed is kind of a factor within reliability, which is interesting, that those, the different factors we had listed are to an extent interrelated. But as far as this question goes, Julie had an additional comment that in Wakulla County, there are different services available in different areas. So you have fiber in some places, and then other areas are limited to DSL or wireless. So the same options aren't available countywide.
Okay, well, and yeah, I can agree with that. And it is interesting to see what people are using and what's available. And I know that there's a lot of reasons for what is currently available in Wakulla and why. So, but I'm interested in how the industries utilize internet because to Julie's point, I think it will definitely, we'll see a little bit of a difference when we get into a more residential public input on the technology that's being used. So,
Katie, this is Brad. When we worked on the MCOR's calls with FDOT, one of the things that I think folks may be interested in is all the industries that are on the call have different technologies. So whether it's wired or wireless or point-to-point, they call those, it's a point-to-point wired solution where it's like two cell or tower dishes that like point at each other. It's really going to take all of the technologies that are available in the marketplace to connect the last 5% population of Florida, which is, the counties that are on this call are definitely experiencing it. But on behalf of our industry members, we recognize that the wired solution is not likely going to be the solution, but we're supportive of the other technologies that will be able to get it. And satellites last year were not a reality, but they are launching tons of them. It seems like every day. So there'll be low orbiting satellites and technologies like that will also be available. So it's going to take everybody working together to get the last 5% of Florida connected.
thank you, Brad. And I agree with that. I have seen what other states have done to close that gap, and it definitely is a group of different technologies that they're using. You're right, it's definitely not one. And it's hard too, because I know the technology just moves so quickly. And we want to be sure that whatever we are doing to assist these rural communities is providing them the most up-to-date technology that we can get to them, so that everyone has the access that they need. You don't want to provide one type of technology that is going to be outdated too soon. Now, I am speaking on that like I know, and I have read a lot about it, but maybe our industry friends may have a different perspective or a comment on that.
Sure, Katie. This is Casey Reed with AT&T. I do agree with Brad's point. As a wireless and fiber provider, AT&T has a pretty robust deployment plan in both areas. But I do agree that a wireless mobile technology is probably a solution that can help address some of these issues. Burying fiber, I think we've heard estimates running from $50,000 to $75,000, per mile. To bury that. I mean, you can just do the simple economics in your head of, getting your money back for just one house in terms of a subscriber. But as we deploy mobile solutions, AT&T and other providers, AT&T has a FirstNet program that we've committed $40 billion to the federal government to deploy a wireless network for first responders throughout nearly 99% of the nation, including Florida. And, in the short term, we think that that'll be something that can be utilized on our consumer network, provided there's not an emergency that necessitates first responders using it. But what we're also seeing in that space is we're seeing the costs reducing on data plans, the reliability going up, and the coverage going up as well. So we think just like after hurricanes and other situations where power and wired facilities are down, that mobile is going to be something that is going to help address this issue. And what Brad was talking about, fixed wireless internet, that's the point-to-point where we put basically a small antenna up on a pole in your property and point it directly line of sight to the tower. And that can provide significant speed increases in your broadband connectivity. So we're looking at all solutions to address this problem, and I'm just happy to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you, Casey. That was really insightful. And to everything that you just spoke to, Pat O'Connell was asking the question, do the service providers agree that all technologies will be required? I think you kind of hit on that. Are there any other providers that could speak to that?
Stacy here, Briggs with T-Mobile. How are you? I figured out how to get in. I feel accomplished this morning.
Well done.
I'm glad to be here. And just to follow up on Casey's point, I mean, it's a competitive environment out there, and T-Mobile recently merged with Sprint. And that with that merger, we've kind of made an unprecedented commitment to get out to rural areas, including rural Florida. Within 99% of all of the country will be covered within 6 years. And I can get some more details on those commitments, but those are part of our merger requirement, but also that will bring the great benefit of just accelerating our plans to build out high-speed broadband, mobile broadband, even high speeds enough to replace fiber in the home, with 5G eventually, and building out not just in urban areas, but going into all areas with new technology, going to 5G from 4G LTE where we are today, and implementing and using the Sprint spectrum, which was the mid-band spectrum, we call it the layer cake. So you'll hear a lot about small cells in your communities, and that's going to be the highest level spectrum, and it's very robust, but it doesn't travel very far, and so that needs a lot of support from a network. And that is also being used, small cell technology is also being used to upgrade LTE and to boost LTE in certain communities. So we're all doing that at the same time, all the providers. I don't want to speak for everyone, but that's kind of been done, and that's getting more robust. But at the same time, we're building out our 5G strategies. Very competitive environment out there, and we all have our different strategies, but certainly competing nationwide now. And we actually are now the number 2 wireless provider in the country. That's we're just a wireless company, and we own Metro PCS, so we have a lot of growth areas for our company in prepaid and other applications in government, and we're just growing very fast, but not forgetting the rural areas. And in fact, that's sort of the backbone of our new network build. So happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Stacy. That was incredibly informative. Thank you. I have one other question. Pat asked also about the cable providers. Is there a cable provider that could respond as well?
This is Bill Ferry, representing Comcast. I really is just to reiterate what Brad Swanson has said is, yeah, I think it takes all technologies to do this heavy lift in the rural and as well as the urban areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you.
Good morning. This is Albert Kaminsky with Charter Communications Spectrum, and I'll just echo what Bill and Brad said. Absolutely, it takes a village in all of this, but we're excited to rise to the challenge.
Awesome. Thank you, Albert, and thank you. I really appreciate you guys being on the call today. Thank you for helping answer some of those questions. Is there anyone else before we move on to the next one?
Hi, this is Jack from CenturyLink, and agree that we believe it's going to take all these technologies from a broadband provider. We're predominantly providing either DSL or fiber. We also provide fiber connectivity to cell sites in our area, and you know, I know initially a comment was made from the user perspective that reliability is the number one concern, and totally understand that from a provider perspective. However, one of our main issues that we deal with is obviously cost. So the more money we are able to spend on a living unit perspective, the more likely we are to be able to provide fiber, and then that addresses the speed and the reliability issue. But I think it was, as Casey pointed out, to provide fiber in many of the rural areas, it's either going to require some sort of aid to construction from a governmental entity, or we're going to have to use less expensive technologies in order to serve those areas. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that. I appreciate the insight. I appreciate all of you speaking up and you know, and helping us better understand that it really is a partnership, and you know, it does take a village. It absolutely does take a village. Is there anybody else for this one? Sean?
As we are asking these questions, we really want our sector folks, our industry sector folks, to share with us any of the challenges or barriers that we may not be specifically addressing, things that may have come up maybe during this pandemic period, above and beyond the things we know have been exposed. Are there specific challenges or barriers, things that you didn't expect that you're being faced with that make the challenge a little more difficult? So be thinking about those, and please share those with us as we go through the questions and also at the end. We really want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. So Caroline, let's go ahead and move to the next question, which is gets into that future technology. And what would you what type of internet technology would help increase internet accessibility for those that you serve in your sector? Is there one over another? Do you feel like your industry sector would respond better to fiber over wireless? Or, you know, you are in those rural areas, so I'm interested to know what your perspective is, and then maybe we can have that conversation. Are there any thoughts on what that future? We did really cover a lot of that in the last question, but if there was any remaining comments. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question then.
Great.
Okay.
All right, so this is, we're almost done with these questions. So please identify the greatest challenge or barrier concerning internet faced by your community or region. And again, this is, yesterday we had a little bit of a different crowd. So I'm interested to see what that looks like here. I know that for, I think what came up about here was really more based on cost. But I'm curious if it has to do with population density. I mean, that's a big deal. There's a lot more space in this area than there are people. So maybe someone from an industry could speak to that, or I'm sorry, from one of the sectors. I want to get to the service providers, but I'd like to, if we can hear from our industry sector folks first. Okay, well, it looks like we have just a lack of providers, limited options. It looks like that's going to be the biggest here in this one. And it's interesting because the yesterday it was cost. So this is a different conversation. So that's interesting. Thank you for some, providing that. Do any of our service providers have any thoughts on?
Sure. Katie, this is Brad. Yeah, I think from the companies that provide traditional cable service options, when we look at the RDOF money that came out that was announced earlier this year, we look at things that change the calculus for how our members can reach companies. So, we testified in committee yesterday, and collectively, and I won't speak for the telecoms, but we all testified together, is when you change the math of how to deploy. So the math is sales tax on head-end equipment, right? So Florida charges that. We're one of very few states in the nation that still do that. If the state decides to move forward and change that kind of an option to make, if you treat capital well, capital will come your way. And so, removing things like sales tax on equipment to deploy while our large electrical utilities are under a federal kind of a standard cost formula for attaching to poles, municipal and electrical co-op pole rates are unchecked. So they're allowed to charge 3 times typically what the big power guys are. So those are like legitimate costs of deployment. So if there's ways that communities can lower those costs and change the math, private sector companies like my members, will relook at, some of these approaches and these opportunities to reach some of these communities. Because, when you're risking private sector capital with no guarantee, to Christy Mason's testimony yesterday, with no guarantee of somebody subscribing to your service, it's a big risk. So I think for us, we look for opportunities like that for communities. If they can, reduce the cost to deploy, it typically can encourage private sector investment in deploying more internet.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, go please, Casey.
Oh, sorry, Katie. I was just going to follow up on Brad. But just reading the question from a customer perspective, or the people in the region, I think Director Eagle touched on it in his presentation yesterday. The 3 A's of challenges, access, affordability, and awareness. And I think this region in particular probably touches on all 3 of those. And when it comes to cost, we've talked at great length about how, the numbers vary. I think the new FCC mapping will be more accurate, but anywhere from 95 to 97% of Floridians have access to some type of broadband internet. This region probably has a lower percentage of that, granted, but the adoption rates of those vary anywhere from 70 to 80%. So, we're having 15 to 20% of people that have availability of services not taking advantage of those. There's probably several factors for that. One is probably cost, in terms of some of these being more expensive. Most of the providers on here all have some type of low cost service that's available. Ours is called Access. I know Brad and his members have several ones. So does CenturyLink, T-Mobile, Verizon. But in addition, we think that the government, whether at the federal level, we've been pushing at the federal level for some type of lifeline reform, some type of voucher, if you will, where somebody that's low income can use that voucher to get whatever service provider, whatever solution they have available that will help address their needs, because we just don't think cost should be a barrier. And then when it comes to lack of internet options, providers and whatnot, that some of that can be attributed to awareness as well. And, it's incumbent on all of us as providers. And I think with your help, to just get out there the availability of fixed wireless solutions, the availability of other products that they may not be aware of. But then access, obviously, in this area is going to be a concern as well.
Agreed. And we have, we, like you said, we're aware of, that had the need for that partnership. So thank you for speaking to that. And you're right. Director Eagle did focus a little bit on that yesterday and comment on, that those 3 A's: the availability, the accessibility, and the affordability. And it is big. Those are 3 big things. But even when you get down into, just each one of those, I mean, those are deep conversations, for our communities as well, on each one of those. Let's see. I do see some comments here.
Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to raise.
Did you want to comment?
I'm not good at raising my hand the official way. I just want to echo what Brad and Casey said, that that sales tax equipment exemption is a real thing in many states, and does make a big difference to our investment folks. And I did want to mention one other thing that I didn't hear, and that is just making it easier to get our permitting done at the local level. I know we have a good law, a state law in Florida, and I'm new to the state, but I know that was a good victory for the deployment folks, and we want to maintain that, but you also want to make sure locality by locality there aren't separate challenges to either that law or the FCC, whichever would prevail. So that's just I don't know of any problems, but that's just one thing we would also say would be a barrier to entry if those things come up.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other comments? I see some comments in the chat box. Okay, so one of the comments that Pat O'Connell had, they asked the question, has anyone developed a formula of the proportions of service delivery will be done by each industry? And yes, the low-cost internet program for Comcast that Bill Ferry mentioned was launched in 2011, and it's called Internet Essentials. And I know that yesterday we touched on some of these low-cost programs. Brad spoke to them yesterday, and I do have a link that he provided that I will be happy to share with our communities so that you can see the different options that are available to those low-income households in different areas. And hopefully those will be something that would be beneficial to your area. Do we have any other comments on this question or any other feedback from our industry sectors?
Hey, Katie, this is Christy Mason with Lumen Technologies. CenturyLink is one of our brands. In regards to the lack of internet service providers and specifically this area, you know, a lot of this comes back to the historical aspect that the state was broken up by your local home phone providers. So we were a rural phone company is how we started in the state of Florida. And as technology's changed and cable's been able to get into the market, and then now with continuing with all of these new technologies, there will be more jumping into different areas of the state, and especially with the federal funding that's coming down, more providers will be able to get into different areas. And so hopefully this area will see lots of new technologies coming on board to assist, because Lumen believes that, you know, we are not, as a fiber provider, we cannot be the answer to every area. Some areas are just extremely hard to serve, and it's going to take another technology to make that work.
Okay. Well, thank you, Christy. I appreciate that insight. All right, so let's move on to our very last question, and that is going to be, would you like to opt in for future communications from the Florida Office of Broadband? So we would love to hear from you, and we would love to make sure that you get the information that you need. If you have questions or if there is anything that we can assist with, we will gladly do so. I'm curious if there's any last final comments or questions for the group today. Well,
I know there are questions out there. We've got all the different sectors on here. We've got education, healthcare, commerce, libraries. Someone's got to have something specific to their sector that they'd like to either share or inquire about.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, I appreciate it. I just want to thank the leadership at DEO for their support and guidance in the establishment of the office. I want to thank our regional planning councils and the Regional Councils Association for volunteering its services and the coordination activities and consultation. I want to thank the RPCs again for facilitating the workshops and reaching out to regional leaders and helping us bring this technology effort together. I thank you to the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television, and last but not least at all, the internet service providers that participated with us today. Thank you so much for your support and your comments, and I genuinely appreciate that. And we look forward to doing it again. We got 8 more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Bye.